Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today we're going to be doing a reviews and ratings episode where I go through all the games I've been playing in the past 2 weeks with friends, family, and even solo. Now, if I have talked about a game on a previous review and rating, I won't talk about it again. I won't review it again, even though maybe I've been playing in the past 2 weeks. But I've got 8 games that I haven't talked about before on this channel, at least review-wise. Uh, and I've got 8 of them. And here's a little bit of spoiler. They're all pretty good games. There's a couple like average games, but these are all games that I would recommend. There's quite a few of them, and there's a couple that I really, really like. But let's just jump right into it with our first game of the week. And I was surprised that I haven't played this game in 2 years, so I have not reviewed this game on my reviews and ratings episodes yet. And that game is Yamatai. Yamatai is essentially a sequel to Five Tribes, actually. And it was originally, I guess, supposed to be a sequel, and then they kind of canceled it. But you can definitely see the similarities between the two games. Now, Yamatai is you are building these basically boat routes around this map. And the map and how this looks once everything is set up and throughout the game looks beautiful. One of the most eye-catching games I have ever played. But the game basically plays as each round a player is going to draft a tile, and on these tiles is going to be a special ability plus a boat and a number. Now the boat is what boats you're going to be able to place around on this board. The special power will just give you some special ability that turn, and the number will determine what your turn order is the next round. And you know, the lower numbered tiles, it guarantees you are going to go earlier next round, but it also has less boats on it and has worse special abilities. The number like 10 is the highest one. It's got the best special ability. It has the most boats, but you are guaranteed to go last the next round. Now you are going to placing these boats out onto this board and trying to encircle these islands with basically specific boat types, boat colors. And if you do that, there's going to be buildings that you're going to be building. If you do that, you can build one of those buildings and gain points that way. There are also these, like, I don't know what they are, like these little flower, like lily pad kind of looking things. You can take those instead of basically building, and you can use those to buy these hero cards. I'm not sure what they're called, but if you've played Five Tribes, they're basically the Jinn cards, which these cards will give you special powers, really powerful special abilities, or they'll give you some ways that you're going to score points even more. This is a great game. It's a good looking game. If you like Five Tribes, you would like this. I give this game an 8 rating, and it possibly deserves even higher than that. Yeah, if you like Five Tribes, I definitely would recommend this one. You can definitely see the similarities between the two, and it's a gorgeous looking game. So let's go to our next game of the day is Anno 1800. I've been putting off this review of Anno 1800 for 6 months now. Now I've played it 3 times, so I feel like I've got a grasp of how I actually feel about this game now. And this is a giant gargantuan game when all laid out. And basically there are a bunch of different tiles on these boards, and there's a ton of them. There's a ton of them. And you are basically going to be using 2 of those tiles to build a different tile that's going to go onto your board. Now, essentially what you need to do is build these really big, powerful cards that are going to be on the far right, and you have cards that tell you which things you need to build to score points, basically. You're basically going to be putting 2 workers out on 2 different tiles, and those 2 different tiles will craft another tile. And basically you see what you need to craft, and you're like, okay, in order to craft that, I'm going to need to craft these 2 things. In order to craft those 2 things, I'm going to need to have these 4 things. In order to have those 4 things, I'm going to need to have these 8 things. So it's a game very much where you see what you need to build, and you have to work backwards from that. And you have to be efficient in this game. It's a giant efficiency puzzle. If you like efficiency games, this is what that is. It's like Scythe, where each turn you have to be as efficient as possible, and if you aren't, you're going to fall behind and you're probably not going to compete or win. But yeah, it's a game that I liked. Right away, I rated this game an 8, and after the 3rd play, it is down to a 7 now. So it's a game I like, but it's not a game I love anymore. It's a game that I would recommend everybody trying, or if you like bigger games, I would recommend trying it. Why it has fallen down is because I don't think there's a ton of replay value in this game. I adore the game. I love the game. Yeah, it was an 8. And then after 3 plays, it has dropped down to a 7 because each game that I've played of this has felt very, very similar. It felt like I was doing the same thing, just building different things, rather, but it feels like the same thing is going on each game that I've played. It's a game that I like. It's a game that I loved right away, but it has fallen because it's felt similar each play. But yeah, it's one I would recommend. It gets a 7 rating. Let's go to our next game. Our next game is a much, much smaller game and plays much faster. This is Dice Miner. Dice Miner got some hype earlier this year. It came out last year. It's a filler type game, and what's interesting about this game is you are going to be drafting dice that are placed on this mountain that's slightly angled. And you're going to be drafting dice basically a la Seven Wonders Duel style, where you're in Seven Wonders Duel, you're drafting cards that are on this pyramid type thing. You're going to be drafting dice that are on a pyramid, an actual pyramid this time. And these dice it's basically a set collection game. There's a bunch of different types of way you can score. There are white dice that let you score for runs. There are bad dice that you can basically cancel and turn them into positive points. There are treasure cards, or treasures, that if you're going to score 1 point for each treasure you have, but if you have the most treasures at the end of each round, you're going to score double whatever your treasures are. And there's a couple more ways to score points in this game. And at the end of each round, the dice that you've taken, you're going to re-roll, and then those dice are going to be in front of you, and then you're going to fill up that mountain again. So you play 3 rounds. After the 3rd round, you're going to have a ton of dice. So each round, hopefully you score more and more and more points. This game is going to get a 6.5 rating from me. Why it isn't higher, I think it's a neat concept. Why it isn't higher, though, is it feels very lucky a lot of times with what you're rolling dice, because there's dice that you can draft that get you rerolls, but if you don't roll the dice, the specific things that you need on those dice, you're just not going to score well. And it also feels very predictable. A lot of times people are just going to take whatever dice is best. We're playing a 2-player game, especially, you need that dice, I need this dice, you need that dice, so I can predict 3 or 4 turns ahead who's going to take what dice. So it's a little bit predictable. So it's fun, it's neat, and it only takes 20-30 minutes. But yeah, it's going to get a 6.5 rating. Pretty average game to me. I was expecting to like this more than I actually did. Let's go to the next game. Next game is another game that got quite a bit of hype last year. Well, maybe it didn't get as much hype. This is Luna Capital. I heard a lot about this game before I got it, so maybe it got hype from me. This is one of those packet drafting games where you are going to draft multiple things, basically. You're going to draft a card and then a tile in this game. You are going to then place that card into a row of yours, and then you're going to place that tile on one of the cards. Each card has 4 slots available to put these tiles in, and these tiles are going to score different ways. You basically want a bunch of tiles of the same type next to each other. That's the gist of it. Some of them score a little bit differently, but you want a lot of the same tiles next to each other on this game. So you're going to be drafting a card that gets some tiles. You're going to take that card, put it anywhere, and then put those tiles that you get with that card somewhere on there. And you are going to play a few rounds of this, but each round you are going to add another tile onto the card slot. So the first round, you are going to take one card that has 1 tile. The second round, you're going to take 1 card that has 2 tiles. Third round, 1 card, 3 tiles. Fourth round, 1 card, 4 tiles. And then you reset and you play 3 or 4 big rounds of this, basically. And so yeah, it gets harder and harder the more rounds you play, because you're going to have more tiles on those cards. So they're going to have some tiles that aren't good, some tiles that are good for you. And you're going to have to make some hard choices for this. This is very comparable to Meadow for me. I'm going to give this a 7.5 rating. I like this game a lot. This, like I said, is very comparable to Meadow. This is a little bit more thinky than Meadow, though. If you like Meadow, but you want a little bit thinkier game, this is going to be right up your alley. Excuse me, not Meadow, Cascadia. It is like Cascadia. Meadow is a completely different game. There's so many like cute little games out there. But yeah, it's like Cascadia. Now, going to our next game, this is Into the Echoside. Into the Echoside is a very strange game because this is a deck building game with the Insane Clown Posse theme attached to it. And I seen that this was a game, and I sent my friend a message. I'm like, look at this game. And she's a big Insane Clown Posse fan. I am not. I basically know nothing about them. But she ended up buying this game, and she invited me over, and it is a very straightforward deck building game. If you know how to play deck building games, you can look at this game and know how to play in about 1 minute. It's very straightforward. You're going to get cards. That some cards are going to be worth points. Some cards have buying power on them, which will let you buy more cards. The one difference basically in this that sets it kind of apart is when you're taking out cards and you have 3 of the same type of card, then it's going to give you a unique special ability. So yeah, it's a very straightforward deck building game. It's a good deck building game. If you like deck building games, you will like this. You will know how to play this almost immediately. It's going to get a 6.5 rating from me though, because it's a very average deck building game. In the sense that if you know deck building games, you know how to play this. But it's good, it's solid. It's not going to stand out for me though. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, actually, though, considering it had this theme on it. Yeah, it's a very solid deck building game if you know deck building games. This is one, if you like Insane Clown Posse, if you like the Insane Clown Posse, the band, get this one. You might enjoy this one quite a bit. Like my friend, I think this has become one of her favorite games now because of the theme. So yes, let's go to our 7th game today. That is Arkham Horror, the card game. Arkham Horror, the card game, is a living card game. And this is basically a board game. It's a card game, but it's made... it's a card game, but it's like a board game. It really is like a board game. I can't believe it's not a board game. It should be Arkham Horror, the card game, the board game. Because you're going to have these cards out, and some cards are locations and stuff. You are going to be playing as investigators, and you're going to be moving around these locations, finding out clues. And this has the Cthulhu theme on it, and it feels very, very thematic. If you like Cthulhu themed games, this is a great game for you. But yeah, you're going to be moving around the board, testing out different skills. You're each going to have an investigator that has unique abilities. You're going to have different stats that are going to affect different things. Fun game. It's got a lot of flavor to it. It feels very thematic. I'm giving this game a 9 rating. But the thing about this game, it gets a 9 if you have a bunch of Arkham Horror. If you only have the base set of Arkham Horror, this would get much, much lower score, because the more cards you have to play with in this game, in this living card game, the funner it is going to be, the more options you're going to have for deck building in this game. Yeah, it's going to get a 9 rating, but yeah, that's if you have a bunch of stuff. It would get probably a 7, 7.5 if you just had the core set plus maybe an expansion or 2. So yeah, 9 rating. I absolutely adore this game. We played through a campaign of the Dunwich Legacy recently, and I hadn't played this game in 2 years. I forgot how much I like this game. Yeah, fun game. Going to our final game of the day. This is another good one. This is Ethnos. And Ethnos is sort of new to me. The first time I played it was 2 months ago. This is an older game that I just never got a chance to play, and I've always thought, I don't know if I want to play because this game looks so ugly. But anyways, this game, you are basically it's a fantasy themed game, which you wouldn't think looking at the board. It's a fantasy themed game, and it is also a area control game. So on your turn, you are either going to take a card that is open to the public. You're going to have a bunch of cards that are face up. You can take one of those, or you can blind draw. These cards are going to have fantasy creatures on them, and they're going to have colors on them. So you can either take one of those cards, take blind, or you can lay down what is called a band, your band of these fantasy creatures. You can either lay down all of one type of fantasy creature, or you can lay down all of one type of color. Now, if you do all fantasy creatures, you're going to choose a leader in that, and whatever the color of that is, you're going to put a little tile onto the board. You're trying to have the most of these little circular discs on this board to have the area control, because at the end of each round you're going to score points depending on which areas you control, and each region is going to score a different amount of points. This is an interesting game. There are the cards that you lay down also will have special abilities on them, and some of them are powerful, some of them are not so powerful, but it makes for a great game. This is a very simple game, actually. This is almost like in line with Ticket to Ride. The turns are very, very fast, especially those turns that you are just taking a card. There are times when we were playing a 6-player game of this, and it'd be take a card, 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 take a card. It's your turn, and it's your turn within 45 seconds of when you went last. So some of the turns are very, very fast. It's going to get an 8 rating from me. The only reason this one doesn't get a higher rating, I mean, it got an 8 rating, so it got really high anyways. The only reason it doesn't go higher is because it's such an ugly board to me. It doesn't have that great of table presence. I think this is one of those games that could really use a reprint of nicer looking cards, a more popping board, something that catches people's eyes. Because right now, I didn't play this game. I put this game off for a couple years because I was like, yeah, it doesn't look that great. But it is great. Do not let that board fool you. So yeah, it's going to get an 8 rating. It's a great game. And that will complete this reviews and ratings episode. So let me know in the comments some of your thoughts of some of these games, if you've played them, if you haven't, some that maybe you want to check out. But either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. Hope you all have an amazing day. Take care, everyone.